Yeah, there's not a lot to share.
We'll see. Hey you, I'm Andy Powell. Welcome to the Allcast Podcast. No topic is off the table. I hope you enjoy. Okay, cool. So,
Have you ever noticed how the Yamaha logo is a tuning forks?
yeah, I was so excited when I learned that.
How does that relate to motorcycles?
Well, they made pianos before they made anything.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Doing pretty good. Been a productive day and a painful day. I had a semi-truck tire fall out of the truck onto my left quad yesterday, and it bruised it pretty bad. So it's been, I've been limping today. I almost fell over at one point because I don't know what's going on with it. But
glad you didn't break anything.
yeah, me too. It was very close to being way worse. It hit my leg, and I stumbled and fell backwards, and there was a trailer right there, and I almost hit my head on the trailer.
That would have been worse.
It could have been,
for sure.
And if it was like 8 inches lower, it would have hit right on my knee and just broke it. So it was super close, kind of a jolt. But so in something that I've learned as far as being a dad, I learned this from somebody else, not through experience, but something that I learned is that the main objective of a dad is to teach your son how to, this is fathers of sons, not of daughters necessarily. It's to teach your son how to deal with suffering, how to manage difficult things, basically. And so that gets me thinking about rites of passage and stuff. And I know that once upon a time you tried to take me to do a rites of passage that did not end very well, didn't go very well. But when it comes to stuff like that, what do you think is a good way to do a rite of passage for a father and a son in Western society today?
Well, backtracking a little bit, I don't know that that's the main reason, the main purpose of a father-son relationship. It's one of them. I mean, it's one of many, but I think that's an important milestone in a young man's life, is to be basically introduced to manhood, into manhood at a point in time that he can mark. Because there's a Pink Floyd song that goes, "You missed the starting gun. You didn't know when to start being an adult."
Yeah,
and I think that's something that we've lost in our culture, in Western culture at large. Is there's just been no point where a man is told when he's a man.
Yeah,
like in the Native American culture, they had their walk that they took for, I don't know, weeks or months at a time when they were a certain age, and they come back and they could hunt with the men and do all the man stuff.
Yeah. There's that one, I think it's in Africa, with the bullet ant glove.
Oh yeah,
Have you heard of that?
No.
So basically they make a big glove and they fill it with those bullet ants, and their rite of passage is that the young boy or young man has to put his hand inside the glove full of bullet ants, and he gets his hand all bit up by these bullet ants, which is, I think that guy Coyote Peterson on YouTube did the bullet ant.
Yeah, he did.
It's like one of the most painful bites or stings in the world.
I thought they were in South America, not Africa, but I could be.
I don't know.
On that.
Either way, they have to stick their hand in the glove for a certain amount of time and then endure that pain.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty intense one. I'm glad that's not what we have to do over here, but
we have other pains we have to learn how to work through.
Yeah.
More practical ones, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think one of the Samoan cultures, they have a tattooing ceremony where the men tattoo the boys, and that's part of their rite of passage.
Huh. Yeah,
I don't know the details on it, but that's another one. And it's not like tattoo shop tattooing. They have big nails with ink on them, and they like tap them with their hand.
Yeah, they kind of hammer it into their skin.
Yep.
Ouch.
Yeah. So, but as far as what is a good rite of passage, the book that I read that I got that idea from, can't remember the author's name, but it was called Raising a Modern Day Knight, and it's basically about bringing up a young man in a way that he protects women and children, and treats them with dignity and honor and love, and is a gentleman toward his family, and is, like Pastor Mark Driscoll says, he's a lion toward people that would harm his family, but he's a lamb with his family, toward his family. So learning those values I think is lost, and it's coming back.
Yeah.
Because of guys like Pastor Mark and John Lovell, and
John Lovell is awesome.
Yeah.
Warrior Poet, I think, is his. I don't know what exactly it is, but he's written a couple books.
I think at least one, on that subject, on raising up men.
Yeah, I heard him speak. Boyhood. I heard him speak on it with Mark Driscoll, actually. And
that was from last week. It was really good. I listened to that one too. Fantastic.
Some of the best one-liners that I've ever heard came from that conversation.
Yeah. And then the parallel is the warrior is the lion and the poet is the lamb. But, it's the same concept with different terminology, but same basic thing.
Yeah. So as far as developing a rite of passage in our culture for Americans, especially right now with the TikTok wave and the Twitter crap and just all the stuff going on that's distracting from being a real person, that Raising a Modern Day Knight book, all the attributes that you mentioned from that, you'd want to kind of condense those into like a field day or like a 1 week thing, or what do you think is an appropriate amount of time for a passage, a marker saying, hey, now is the time?
Well, there has to be a lot leading up to that. There has to be a family culture of that kind of attitude being modeled, throughout a young boy's life. It's not just something where you ignore the kid for 12 years and then all of a sudden you say, hey, you're a man now, or whatever.
Yeah.
It has to be, but once, if that's modeled and if that's nurtured throughout a boy's life, up until he's ready. I don't want to say an age because, it could be, for some boys it could be 10, for some it could be 15 or 16, or it could be later for some too,
Yeah, it depends on the kid.
But I don't know that I think it would have to be individually tailored for the kid or the family or the particular, just the lifestyle of that family.
That makes
I
sense.
think a 1 day thing with a big ceremony with a bunch of other men and boys who are going through it or who have gone through it together is good. Not like some weird cult thing or something, but like just a celebration of. The Jews do it, and they call it bar mitzvah. That's what bar mitzvah is.
Isn't it like a party?
It's a huge party. Yeah.
It's just a giant celebration.
Big celebration.
Okay, you're a man now.
And all the men of the family give him money or whatever.
Do they have to go through like a difficult thing to get to that point, or is it just automatic?
That I don't know. I don't know what it is, but
yeah,
it's something that they do look forward to. I know that. And I don't know if it's at a certain age. That's something that we'd have to research a little bit, but but that's, I think, a 1 day event. But there's a lot of anticipation building up to it. So
yeah, I think a trial a test of some sort, a test, some sort of resistance, an obstacle to be overcome, I think is super important for that rite of passage. Otherwise, you're not really passing. You're just, well, you're getting a pass at that point.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point. And I don't remember anything in that book that was like that.
So it's more about the values of raising a boy to be a man in a certain way.
Yeah.
Rather than like a marker.
Yeah, and I think that one of those difficult things could just be wrestling with your dad for years and years and learning how to fight. I think that's just to be able to defend yourself and to defend your family, even just with your hands if you have to.
That's a good one. Cool. Yeah, I think custom tailoring that per family is super important, just to get the men up to speed on what to do and how to raise their boy. That's kind of how we do it right now, but it doesn't seem like there's a thing, like a statement, like a bar mitzvah or whatever,
right?
Or a walkabout or whatever it may be. That needs to happen over here in America.
Yeah, and I think that, the age of 18 thing is just kind of it's just a thing that our culture has kind of established, and it doesn't really mean much because you're still a teenager. Back in the pioneer days, there was no teenagers. It was, you grew up, you helped dad on the farm, and, you got married and you're a man, and that was your rite of passage.
Yeah, you better know how to chop wood and make fire and find food and trap food or whatever it may be.
And that's just because that's what was modeled to you, and that's what you grew up doing, and we've lost that. Yeah. And it really makes me sad.
Well, speaking of food, growing food, that's what they had to do back then a lot. Agriculture, hunting, trapping.
Mm-hmm.
You do some food growing yourself.
I'm trying to.
So why do you grow food? Why do you grow your own food?
The primary reason is so that I know where it comes from and what's in it.
Cool. Yeah. Any secondary reasons?
Tastes better than food trucked in from Mexico.
Yeah. Right on.
From a factory farm.
Yeah. Cool. And what do you get most excited about the growing process of? What type of food, or vegetables or fungus, or?
I'm kind of partial to hot peppers.
Hot peppers.
Yeah.
That's the thing you're most excited to grow.
Yeah, but you can't really feed a family on that.
No, not quite.
That's more of a side thing, but the easy stuff that fill your belly, potatoes and squash and that kind of stuff, and then secondary stuff, lettuce and corn and fish.
Yeah, you do aquaponics a little bit.
I started aquaponics a year ago. Yeah, about a year ago.
And aquaponics is a system basically where you have a container with water in it, and the fish live in the water, and the water gets recirculated up to a tray on top of the container, which basically that water has the fish poop in it, and the fish poop feeds the soil in the top tray, which grows vegetables. That's
good? Very general nutshell. The tray doesn't have to be on top of the fish. It can be a mile away or.
Oh, okay.
But so the point is that the fish, and it's not so much the poop; it's the ammonia that their gills produce.
Oh. When
they breathe water, and some of it is the poop and the solids and the ammonia in their urine, but that ammonia is converted by one type of bacteria to nitrites, and then it's converted again to another kind of bacteria into nitrates, which is available to the plants.
Okay.
So there's a couple of things you have to add to the water for the plants, like iron. That's the main thing. They get most everything else from the fish.
Wow. So if you're trying to add iron to it, I'm sure you can go buy a product that is an additive for specifically that.
I use a chelated iron, which is a powder. It's a bright yellow colored powder that you just put a couple of tablespoons a week or so in there, and it's enough to keep the plants.
If you didn't have access to that powder, what would you use to add iron? Some sort of food that's rich in iron?
Good question. Hadn't thought of that. Maybe throw a handful of nails in there. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
It could.
might have problems down the line with the rust.
Yeah.
What else? What else do you grow? What's your? You said potatoes and squash, and you've grown some fruit and some citrus, right?
We didn't grow the citrus. Our neighbor did down in the Phoenix area, but his tree hung over about halfway over our yard, and he let us take whatever we wanted off of it.
Yeah, once those trees start producing, they produce a
Yeah,
lot.
they don't need a whole lot of attention.
That's awesome.
We don't grow those. We can't grow those where we are now, but
Higher elevation.
yeah, we have a couple of peach trees that we planted last year that did really well through the summer. They didn't produce anything yet, but we're hoping to get something out of them this year. Grew a big box full of strawberries. We'll probably expand that next year.
So
Fair amount of squash.
So aside from meat, all of this stuff that you're mentioning, the fruit, the squash, the potatoes, what scale would you have to grow that on in order to 100% sustain your food needs for a family of 5?
I've heard that question before posed to people that try to grow 100% of their own food, and that's just not possible.
It's not possible.
There's so many things that you need. There's several things that you need that you just, like wheat. I mean, if you had a lot of acreage, you could grow enough wheat for yourself to make your own bread.
So you mean nutritionally there's stuff that you need?
No, plant-wise. I mean, I suppose you could grow everything you needed to grow if you had enough property. A couple acres at least would possibly do it, but I've seen interviews with people that have tried it and they just can't. You just can't do it.
Yeah,
you get a lot of a few things, but
Uh-huh.
there's a few things that you just, I don't know, you forget you need them, or
and food being so seasonal in
Right,
its,
and
in
that's
its
another part
natural
of it.
state.
Exactly.
You can't always have that food around.
Yep.
Like we're lucky to have. I mean, this is kind of a double-edged sword here. We're lucky to have these different types of foods that are genetically modified, or they have their whatever way they're grown in. They're almost always available to us. You go to the store any time of year, you can get avocados.
Yep, and that's not natural.
That's not natural.
That's not normal.
Yeah, I don't even know if most people understand that.
No, I don't think they do, and that's another cultural issue that is kind of a big deal to me, is that people need to know where their food comes from, and especially their meat, because
Oh yeah.
People just think that their meat comes from the store.
Well, it does sort of, but it comes from somewhere before that.
Finally, it does, but
Yeah.
It's kind of humorous, but it's really sad at the same time.
Yeah. So I guess that's what initially when the pioneers, or before like larger scale agriculture happened, it was basically a family on a farm doing exactly that. They're raising livestock on a small scale.
Mm-hmm.
They're growing food on a small scale.
Right.
And basically the vegetables and the fruits supplement the meat, right? They generally have more meat or eggs
Sure.
than vegetables.
I mean, it depends on. I suppose it would depend on the garden or the family, and But a lot of those families in the, I'm talking the mid to late 1800s that were on the on the frontier.
Yeah.
They were not just growing stuff for themselves. They would grow 3 or 4 things really well and then barter for other things that they needed on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure where this monocropping came from or when that started, but
Money,
yeah,
greed,
yeah, for sure.
or maybe not even greed, just profit. It's just wanting profit and have more value.
Some things are easier to grow in mass, and
if there's a demand for it, hey, I'll do that. Why not?
Yeah. So back to aquaponics for a second. The top box where you grow things is it's not soil. It's some kind of a substrate that can't really get down into the water. So it'll be a type of gravel, or it'll be In our case, we use a clay bead. It's a manufactured product that can be used for years and years. But it has loads of surface area for all those bacteria to produce and reproduce. And once you've got those bacteria growing, they're there forever. So you can, this batch of clay beads that I got from a friend of mine was probably sitting in buckets for 2 or 3 years in a shed. And they kicked right off. I put them in there, I put water in there, and plants started growing immediately. They had all the nutrition they needed right away, which is, I guess it was kind of seeded that way. So
Okay.
But if you were to buy, the brand new gravel or something, it would take a while to get that established with fish.
So for a family of 5 trying to grow and manage all their own food on a few acres is not very feasible, because not only is stuff seasonal, there's also a limited amount of people to tend to all of the needs of all of the different plants that supply the nutrition that a human being or 5 of them require.
That's another thing, yeah.
So it's hard to.
This information what I'm telling you now is coming from a family in, I want to say, the San Bernardino area that does like a urban farm kind of a thing, and they have like 1/10 of an acre, I want to say.
Oh, I've heard of this.
In a city block, and they grow enough food that they sell a lot of it, but they don't grow everything that they want to eat.
Yeah, like my neighbor. My neighbor behind me grows kale and different types of lettuce and chard and tomatoes, and he called me up one day and said, "Hey, do you want some of this stuff? There's no way we're going to be able to eat it all."
Yeah,
and
but they go to the store and buy stuff that they can't grow,
right?
Doesn't grow here.
Yeah, so it's a team effort, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's helpful to live this close to the desert, where they can grow citrus and other things year round that we can't grow so much up here. And an hour or 2 away from Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
Down in Phoenix, they grow all the citrus you could ever imagine.
Yeah, and peppers.
And pretty much year round. So
cool. So, in an effort to know where your food comes from, to have it taste better, and to trade locally, this rubs shoulders with the prepper mentality, or the self-reliant mentality. And I think that that's a super important distinction to make in today's world, because one of them is based on fear and one of them is based on abundance, in my view. And the preppers, the people that stockpile things because they're afraid of what might happen, is the crazy stuff you see on those TV shows where they're waiting for the volcano to explode, and that's their one disaster.
That's the one disaster they're prepared for. But
when realistically, the disasters that might actually occur are much smaller and have a much different impact.
They're much more localized.
Yes.
Yeah, and regional or personal.
Yeah.
You get a flat tire. Are you prepared for that?
Right.
You might be prepared for the big one, the big 12 earthquake or whatever, but can you handle a flat tire on the freeway?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah, exactly. or like maybe a tainted water supply.
Yeah.
What if you have your water supply gets cut off? I like to use Phoenix as an example, because Phoenix is a good and a bad example. It's in a desert, and it has 5-ish million people documented, and probably a couple more million undocumented.
Yeah.
But either way, there's millions of people there that have to eat and drink every single day.
Yep.
And very, very little of what is consumed there is actually grown or produced there.
Correct.
So you are almost 100% reliant on products that are shipped in from somewhere else. So the supply chain issue that we saw during COVID is that's a real thing. And that could be a real issue for cities like Phoenix.
Yes.
And other giant cities where they're not producing, or people aren't growing their own food, etc. So it's a scary example, because if if the supply chain gets cut off for whatever reason, political allowance for resources like diesel fuel, whatever it may be, if that happens, then what? Those people are going to have a lot of problems.
Yeah, they are.
And
they're going to be running for the hills looking for people who do prepare for the worst.
or looking for water, looking for a spring. and if you can't clean the water that is running in the seldom found river in the area, then you're going to die. You're going to get sick. And
right. Well, I imagine I can picture those people all flocking to the lakes around the valley.
Yeah.
Quickly polluting the lakes, making them unpotable at best.
Yeah.
And just a cesspool at worst. And I mean, that's their only hope for a while.
I think they're already undrinkable. You can't just go to one of those lakes and drink out of it. I mean, you could, but I wouldn't. I would clean it first.
Yeah, I mean, in emergency, you would drink it.
Oh, I would drink it in emergency, of course.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that it's good for you to drink.
Right.
Yeah.
True.
The spring would be ideal, and even then, there's. Actually, I don't know enough to speak to that. I've heard that there are some springs that are undrinkable, that have had fracking has had an issue with polluting some waterways or something like that.
Yeah, well, there's no fracking in Arizona, but yeah, it's mostly back east. They're looking for natural gas.
Right, but I'm just talking in general. Everyone might have this issue.
Yeah.
So
I'm looking up something here real quick.
Cool, yeah.
There's a book that I don't know if you've read it. It's called Only by Blood and Suffering. It's kind of along these lines of what happens when everything collapses and is not as the people are used to it being. And it's a graphic novel. It's a novel written by a Mormon guy who actually was one of the guys that died at the Bundy event in Idaho. He wrote that before he went up to that.
What is the Bundy event?
The Bundys were a family, I think, in Idaho.
This is different than Ted Bundy, right?
Different.
Yes. I got to make that.
Yeah, the Bundy family. They're ranchers up there, and they were on. They had leased land from BLM.
The Bureau of Land Management.
Man, you gotta specify these things.
Yeah. People are getting crazy these days.
So, I don't know if their lease expired or the BLM just decided they didn't want them. Something was passed or something that was cutting off the ranchers from using the land for grazing for cattle. And there was the big standoff, like with weapons and everything. And
this is recent, right? This is within the last 10, 15 years?
Yes.
I remember this.
Yeah.
I remember this being on the news.
I remember you talking about going up there.
We don't.
I think you talked about it.
I did.
Yeah. You didn't go up there, thankfully. But,
no, I didn't.
Anyway, the author was one of the guys that was there helping defend Bundy family.
Okay.
The book that he wrote actually was kind of prophetic because it really highlighted a lot of things that happened at that event, not the end of the world stuff. But the book that he wrote is called Only by Blood and Suffering, and it's about a major EMP event that takes place in the atmosphere above the middle of America and takes out everything, basically.
Do you know about the Tunguska event in Russia?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the meteorite, or I don't know the proper term, meteorite, comet. It's not a comet, but it exploded in the air and then felled in an almost, I think, thousands of acres of forest. These trees were just laid flat by this airburst of meteor breaking up in the atmosphere. But that's what that makes me think of. So an EMP in this fictional novel written by this guy who was
it's near future maybe fiction.
It's written as fiction, but it's like a, hey, heads up, guys, this is kind of where things are headed.
It's definitely like that, and it's a very intense book, and it's this EMP occurs, and he has adult kids that are in different cities, and they're all trying to make their way back to him and to his ranch that's totally self-reliant, and they have their own springs, and they have their own cattle, and without giving too much away, the town near where he lives is trying to get him to give his cattle away, and they're threatening him, and it's a whole situation. But highly recommended book, and I was trying to look up the name of the author.
There's another book that I have just started reading. It's called The Civil Defense Manual, and it is by a man called Jack Lawson, who is a former special operations guy in the United States military, somewhere in there. And he starts off the book by saying, hey, I lived through this. He lived through the actual economic collapse of a country in which people were trying to raid their neighbors' houses for food, for alcohol as medicine, for bullets, for things to clean water. And so this is, I mean, it's not like in the West, we have entertainment as a huge part of our culture, and so we watch all these fun movies that are about, oh, what if this happened, what if that happened. Stuff like that can really happen, and it really has happened, and people write books on it and say, well, this is what we did, this is how we survived. And so
the author of the book I was looking up was Lavoy Finicum is his name. He was a Mormon, I think from northern Arizona, and
Lavoy Finicum.
Lavoy Finicum. It's very Irish, if you ask me, but
quite a name. Right on. So in an effort to be self-reliant and not a scared prepper, I mean, what do you think are the, I don't know, 3 most important things to have in place at your home?
The ability and the skill to just grow your own food of some sort or kind or another, and to preserve it. I consider that one core skill.
Food,
but more specifically, the knowledge and the practiced knowledge of just being able to grow it yourself, grow your own stuff.
So no matter where you're at, stop what you're doing, find a food to start growing as an experiment, learn from it. And
go to Kroger and buy a bag of pinto beans and plant them. They'll grow.
Oh, okay.
If that's where you start, that's excellent. Buy some tomatoes and dry the seeds out of them and grow them. Try and get heirloom tomatoes, because I don't know what the hybrid ones will do. They might be irradiated before they get to the store.
Well, and their offspring might not be able to grow, right? They might not produce seeds.
Right.
So you want heirloom. Heirloom is the key word when finding something to grow that will drop seeds that can grow more plants, etc.
Yep.
Otherwise, within a few generations, there will be nothing to plant.
It's a huge science that it could be just fine for a long time. Like Roma tomatoes have been highly hybridized, but you can get any Roma tomato from the store. If it hasn't been irradiated to kill off bacteria or whatever, they'll grow. They'll grow more Roma tomatoes for generations. So, because it's Roma is an heirloom that's been hybridized, not GMO. That's different. All kinds of plants are hybridized for good reasons, and they're still perfectly good plants.
Okay.
Seeds.
Okay.
So, but there are seeds that are hybridized for the purpose of not being able to grow them for any generations past the first or second.
And that's something that like Monsanto does, right?
No, they do. Well, they probably do some of that. I don't know.
Well,
they do genetically engineered seeds where they're the only ones that can produce and sell these seeds. Every year farmers have to buy these seeds from them.
Because those plants don't reproduce.
No. They're resistant. No, and if you're caught saving the seeds that you buy from Monsanto, they'll sue you. And it might even be a crime.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's
and
insane.
they actually have lawyers that go visit farmers all the time on a regular basis. It's ridiculous. In fact, I've heard stories of farmers across the highway from a Monsanto customer farmer, across the highway growing non-Monsanto corn, whose corn got pollinated by the Monsanto corn, and Monsanto sued him because he saved the seeds from his own corn that was pollinated by Monsanto corn.
That should be a crime. That's so criminal.
I know.
I mean,
but it's, well, like you said earlier, it's money. It's all about money.
It is, yeah. And
I'd say if anybody listening that knows anybody that has stock in Monsanto, it's now Bayer Monsanto. They were bought out by Bayer.
Bayer, which produces
things
like
it's a
aspirin.
German company, yeah.
Right,
they're a huge pharmaceutical conglomerate, and I'm sure there's hundreds of companies that they own. But
I heard
not only did they take on Monsanto's profit, they took on a whole bunch of Monsanto's lawsuit debt too. That
I heard a quote from Will Harris, the White Oaks pastures farmer from Georgia, who's doing really good regenerative farming right now. He said something like, if you want to make money, sell bullets and sell bandages. So you're selling the thing that creates the need for the other thing. This is like war profiteering, where they sell weapons to both sides. It's the same concept.
Well, it's the same thing with that our own government did with COVID.
Yeah.
They created COVID, and then they created a cure for it. And
which is not a cure. It's
definitely not. It's genocide. It's the beginnings of genocide.
Yes.
I've seen pictures, and this is a rabbit trail, but I've seen pictures of autopsies of people that have died after their this so-called vaccine, which isn't really a vaccine at all.
Yeah.
Where they've had blood clots, long, like inches long blood clots that they've pulled out of people's veins, and they had them all laid out on a tray.
The blood clots?
The blood clots were all laid out on a tray next to the cadaver that they were just to do the autopsy on. And, I mean, they're in their heart, they're in their brain,
Yeah, so this is mRNA technology.
Yep.
That has been, the development of it has been exacerbated by Bill Gates, right?
That I don't know. I can't speak to that. And I don't know, I'm not sciencey enough on that kind of stuff to really speak intelligently about it, but I know what is happening. I know hundreds of thousands of people are dying after getting vaccinated.
Yeah.
Healthy, young, 20 and 30-something people are dying on sports fields. And
this new thing called sudden adult death syndrome.
Yeah.
That they don't, for some reason.
I didn't know it had a name already.
Oh, yeah, SADS. There's sudden infant death syndrome, which has been a thing for decades.
Right.
And now there's SIDS and SADS. But this, I think that's a brand new thing. But what's interesting is that if you get into a car accident and you die and you happen to have be affected by COVID at that time, they'll mark it as a COVID death. Yeah. So they jack up the numbers.
They weren't separating. They are now. They weren't separating the difference between dying of COVID and dying with COVID.
Right. Yeah.
They're making that distinction now because.
Oh, they are.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that they changed it.
They've been called out on that deception numerous times in court. So.
Very good.
That's being settled.
Good.
People are starting to see the light on this COVID crap.
Yeah. Yeah, big old ruse. All right. Well, so self-reliance, prepping.
You asked me
what are the three?
And
the first one was.
So far, I've given you one.
The skill of being able to grow some sort of food.
Yes.
And sustain it.
Yep.
What's another one?
Another one is a network of people that are willing to share information, share ideas, and barter. Without currency, without, government currency or money or cash of any kind.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to barter services and goods.
Very good. So a network. So first one is the growing of a food, or the skill to grow food. Second one is to to have a network established.
Yeah, network of people of various levels of skills and knowledge and all kinds of things, medical and mechanical and all those things that are important to a society. I think that's pretty important. And the third one, if you're ready for a third one.
We'll dive into the second one after you give me the third.
Okay. I think the third one is probably redundancies.
Which is?
For example, we rely on electricity to heat our houses in the wintertime, but we also have a wood stove, which we've had to use when it gets, when the power goes out.
So this is the 2 is 1.
2 is 1, none. 1 is none. And that's not mine, but that was from a guy that Jack Spirko had on the Survival Podcast on a regular basis.
Wasn't it Dave Canterbury?
No.
Oh, it was not him. Okay.
No, it was the solar guy. I don't remember his name.
That's okay, but the concept is 2 is 1, 1 is none. If you have 2 and 1 breaks, then you only have 1, but you still have 1. So you want to have 2 of everything at least.
It's like, and that concept comes from aviation.
Oh,
where
engines?
All the systems on an airplane have redundancy.
Okay.
All the important systems.
Fail-safes,
hydraulics,
basically.
fail-safes, exactly.
Yeah.
So if something goes down, you have another way to handle, the same problem.
So you mentioned a super practical one that applies to everybody if you have cold winters, which is heat. You have a heater in your house, and if that thing breaks or if electricity is unavailable, then a wood-burning stove, that'll solve that problem.
Is an option.
As long as you have something to burn in it.
Exactly.
So that brings up more redundancy, really. Storing wood or stocking wood or a way to cut wood and another way to cut wood.
True.
So
yes, it can. Yes.
But this stuff is not fear-based stuff. This is practical stuff that
this is just
pioneers
everyday
did.
common sense.
Yes.
It's
but we've gotten so far away from that because we live in abundant luxury, and we
for sure
we just
assume that everything that we're used to having on a daily basis is always going to be there.
Permanent. Yeah.
I just don't think it is.
No, it's not. No. Well, we see that with California right now because they're signing into law something that says no more fossil fuel driven cars by this date, right? And then I think it was the very next day they said something about don't charge your car because the grid can't handle that many. Something like that. Like how idiotic and short-sighted is that?
And they won't let people install solar because it's an eyesore.
What?
Really? Yeah, there's a lot of cities in California. Well, there's all over the place, but
I didn't know that. Yeah,
solar, wind, because they mess with people's skyline, and so they can't, see the mountains like they used to because there's wind turbines in the way or whatever.
Well,
it's just that you can't.
I get
these
that
people
one.
Are illogical. They they make decisions based on how they feel at any given moment about something, and if somebody they don't like says something, they just take the opposite view just to be difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's no way to run a country or a state or a city or any form of government. It's just
right. So
it's insanity.
Well, that's the largest scale, and that's basically what we see when we turn on the TV or any website. We see the largest scale operating, which is basically nationwide, of this system that is obviously not working. So in order to actually be able to do something as an individual on that lower level, it's the Jack Spirko thing, who's a podcaster, a survivalist, and he says basically it boils down to your household, then your neighborhood, then your town, then your county, and that's the order of priority. Right. Don't worry about what's going on the national scale. Look at it, notice it, acknowledge how it might affect you down the line.
Exactly.
But as far as what you're doing and acting upon, that's not really the way to go. You want to go with, what are my local laws? What's happening here?
Yeah. That goes both ways. It goes to the disaster direction, because if something happens, it's usually local. When there's a major problem,
Florida,
it's
hurricane.
local. Yeah, exactly. Earthquake, in one city or. But it also goes the other way to change things, to make things change. So, that's why he encourages people, or other people I've listened to also, encourages people to start getting involved by getting on a school board or to at least go to school board meetings. Because that's the most local, basic form of government that you can get involved in.
And it might sound really boring and really how does this apply to me?
You might also be surprised what kind of crap schools are trying to push on kids now, too.
That's the thing. It sounds boring, but, a few years from now, when your kids have been indoctrinated with apartheid, which is CRT, then what? Then it's too late. So it might take some suck it up and go to the boring school board meeting to see what they're doing there.
Yeah.
Unfortunate, but what's that Metallica song? Sad but true. So the number 2 that we talked about, you mentioned establishing a network of people.
Right.
So that thing right there, that going to school board meetings, like you can network with those people, you can network up with other parents and other people in whatever field you're in. For me, an example would be diesel mechanics. So that's what I do. So I can network with people in that industry and be able to, provide a service or a skill, assuming that stuff is still happening in some type of an emergency, which probably will be. But the networking, you mentioned communication. You said people that are willing to share communication. And one thing that brings up for me is ham radio, which I know that you're an expert at. If I compare my level of knowledge versus your level of knowledge, you might not see it that way when you're comparing your level to someone else's,
for sure.
Or the available
some
knowledge.
People out there way smarter than me on that stuff, but
but from 0 to you, there's a big gap. So
okay, I'll take that.
First of all, what is ham radio? What does it stand for? HAM.
It's not an acronym.
Why did they call it ham?
There's some speculation that it had to do with some guys on amateur radio that were telling jokes, and people were saying they were a bunch of hams.
Goofy.
So yeah.
Okay, interesting.
So I guess that term stuck, and that's one story that I've heard. I don't know how accurate it is or if it's right or not, but it's not an acronym.
That's hilarious. I didn't know that. So there's ham radio, and then there's CB, and CB anybody can operate.
Yeah.
Which is a certain frequency band of radio waves.
Yeah, it's 26 and 27 megahertz.
That's CB. So truckers use that. Anybody can buy a CB radio and operate it with no issue. But with ham, you're operating at different frequency bands, and you have to be licensed by the FCC in order to use it.
Yep.
So there's 3 different levels of licensing. There's technician, general, and expert, and each of them come with their own basically range of radio frequency ranges you're allowed to use and operate on.
Yeah, it's a technician, general, and extra.
Extra, not expert.
Right, extra.
Okay. So
they're called privileges. They're band privileges, or
so that sounds like an oxymoron. Band privileges.
Maybe it is.
Band. Sorry.
No, not that band.
No, like a
4-letter word band.
Like a wavelength.
Yeah,
band.
Exactly. Yeah, so technicians have a pretty limited amount of privileges. It's kind of an introductory license class. General class operators they have a lot more privileges than technician, and then the extra class license holders can use all of the amateur radio bands.
And that's the main gist of the different privileges is that now you can operate on these other frequencies. That's the main meat and potatoes of why you would get a higher level license.
Pretty much, yeah.
Got it. Yep. Okay, so is there any real benefit to having those other things available to you, those other frequencies?
Yeah, there are, because there's some foreign operators that only operate in those extra class portions of the band. So
Foreign operators to me sounds like
foreign
espionage.
foreign amateur radio operators.
Okay, so people in another country that are working ham radio bands only operate on certain ones.
No, a lot of them will, just because they only, I don't know, they only want to talk to extras, or they just, it's a lot easier to manage, 10% of the people that are trying to get through to them rather than 100% or something. Because it's,
okay.
So if you're a rare country out there that everybody's looking for, if you operate down in the extra part of the band, you get fewer people trying to contact you, so it's a little more manageable.
And what you're referring to when people are looking for these people to contact is basically just to like put a pin in on the world map of, say, hey, I talked to someone here, right?
Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
and you build up a whole log of contacts from
Mhm.
all over the world, and there's awards that you can earn for a certain number of countries or continents, or
yeah, so a lot of that sounds like the hobby side of ham radio, right?
For sure.
And I prefer the practicality aspect of it. That's why I got a ham radio license, is because of the practicality of, well, what if this happens, and one of these things is communications. What if communications fail, cell phones don't work, whatever, internet's, I don't know enough about how those technologies work to know how to fix them or make sure that I have internet when the internet company shuts it off, or if that happens, or if electricity goes out, whatever. So a lot of these places where you see a mountaintop and it has just a cluster of giant radio towers on it, oftentimes those clusters will have repeaters that are specifically for ham radio frequency ranges.
Right, for sure.
And
one or two or maybe three of those dozen or more antennas will be for amateur radio. Other ones, they're for commercial broadcast, they're for sheriff's departments and state police and that sort of thing to communicate over the mountain.
And the police don't operate on ham frequencies, do they?
Nope.
They operate on different ones that are not available to hams?
Correct, yeah.
And those are generally encrypted?
Not always. Maybe, I don't really know how much of it is encrypted, but here in Arizona, there's only a couple of agencies I know of that are encrypted.
Oh, okay.
You can listen to state police and sheriff's departments and most city police on just open frequencies.
And
I mean, they're licensed for those frequencies, but
right. But in order to listen, you don't have to do anything except buy the equipment that can receive those radio waves.
right,
So a scanner, a police scanner, whatever.
a police scanner, or even these cheap Baofeng radios now, they have the ability to receive most law enforcement agencies.
I have an app on my phone called 50 Radio that does that. I can select whatever department I want in the local area, and I can listen to the police scanner on my phone app.
Until the internet goes out.
Right.
Or your cell service goes out. And then you can't do that.
So that's what I wanted to get at, along with the communications network. You want to find out if there's some large-scale thing that happens where, internet doesn't work, phones don't work. Could ham radio equipment and the repeater towers that are on top of these mountains, can they withstand EMP, or are they going to get shut down with an EMP?
They probably would not survive an EMP.
Okay.
And there's probably very few that are hardened against that.
So if that happens, then how would you reestablish one of those radios or towers? Would you have to rebuild it with new minerals?
Yeah, or new components that you'd have to start from scratch.
Okay.
Yeah, it would probably take days or weeks, or if you had the stuff on hand already, days
to assemble it,
and get it back online.
Because these are circuit boards, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're computers, and they're little computer-driven repeaters, some of them. There are a lot of hams that keep equipment in an EMP-proof box.
Oh.
So if there is an event like that, they can pull out the equipment and get right back at it.
I didn't know that was even a thing. So what about the repeater towers?
I don't think I think they're totally susceptible to an EMP.
Okay.
They would have to get back up there and install a new repeater probably.
Wow.
I don't know enough about EMPs either to really tell how destructive they can be.
Yeah.
I know that the solar EMPs can be pretty severe.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know anything about EMPs other than what I've seen in movies, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
All right. So it's good to have a different method of communication, that network, and especially with ham, I'm sure you would want to build like a local network. Like, oh, well, we're in this county. What's the next county over doing? What's happening with them? Do you know a person? Do you have their contact information and what band they're going to be monitoring? If something happens, so you can just so you can share information. Oh, we're sending medicine over this mountain pass because this bridge is out.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, that's one of the purposes of amateur radio is for emergency communications.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole host of hams that are very serious about it, and it's a big deal. Mm. And a lot of it integrates with government and sheriff's departments and state police and federal government, emergency management agencies and stuff like that. People that actually train to handle those kind of communications when that's all there is.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Well, ham radio is something I've been getting more into lately, and I've been really enjoying it, monitoring the different repeaters and seeing how far I can, seeing what repeaters I can reach. I was up at, I was north of Sunset Point, and I was hitting the Del Webb repeater in like Sun City, or I think it's on top of the Sun City Hospital.
Yep.
Yeah, I was amazed that I hit it that far.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You have a great room here for a ham shack.
Yeah, that's my next little pursuit.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You're gonna get your next license class, and
I will
do some HF.
I will.
Big antenna.
I want to get an antenna, a bigger antenna, and get probably a different rig, I think you call it, which is a radio.
Yeah.
Just a different radio that has the ability to do more stuff, and maybe reach out further, depending on the power source behind it. I don't know enough about how that works, but basically the more power you have going to the radio, the further out you can broadcast.
It's more reliant on it. The antenna is at least as important as the amount of power, if not more important.
Okay.
Yeah, a good quality antenna can outperform somebody with an amplifier with a crappy antenna all day long.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really all about the metal in the air.
And there's two other things that interest me I want to talk about real quick before we change gears. One of them is how did you get interested and involved in radio stuff?
My first ham radio license I got because I was organizing a rally race,
Off-road.
the Desert Storm Rally.
Yeah.
And I needed to have communications for that, so I got my technician license in 2004 to help me with the rally races. Mm-hmm. And no, that wasn't when I was organizing it. That was when I was actually a co-driver and helping with another team in the pits. It was a couple of years after that I started organizing an event.
Okay.
So
cool. Now the one thing that interests me is the word wavelength. When you're talking about these different bands and wavelengths, this is a real thing. It's really self-explanatory when you say it. It's the actual length of the radio, or it's the distance between waves, right?
Yeah.
And so when I'm operating on 2 meter, which is the most common,
yes,
it's the one radio wave is 2 meters away from the next radio wave.
Correct. But they're traveling at the speed of light, so
speed of light?
How they measure that, I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, well, I can conceive of how they might measure it.
I'm sure there's lots of different devices for measuring it.
Yeah, yeah.
So you'll have an antenna that's a third wavelength or a 5/8 wavelength or a full wavelength. So a 2 meter full wavelength 2 meter antenna will be 2 meters long.
78 inches. 78 inches.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, 39 inches in a meter.
Yeah.
So that's a big antenna. You carry that around on your car or whatever.
So, but most like a quarter wave is 19 and a quarter inches long for 2 meters. So,
okay,
do the math. That should be about right. 38.
All right. So I want to try and connect a concept that I've heard before that's fascinating to me that kind of has to do with radios and wavelengths and receivers and antennas and stuff. So this concept that I've heard is that our brains are like radio receivers, and they can tune into different frequencies. Have you heard of that? Have you heard that before? That the brain is like a receiver antenna. So when you're in that space where you're almost asleep, but you're not quite asleep, it's like the reality between waking and dreaming or something. You have different thoughts, or you have like what feels like a waking dream.
Yeah.
Right. So the idea would be that your brain is tuned to a different frequency to monitor.
I've never heard that.
No.
I don't really care enough to look into it.
Yeah, well, I'm not explaining
really.
it. I'm not explaining it.
Maybe not. I don't know.
No, I'm not.
It's like mescaline or something. It's the only way to fly, they say.
That's Matrix quote. Well, that would be another example, is that if you use some sort of psychedelic, psychoactive thing, it does change the frequency range of your brain that they're looking at through these.
But what
fMRIs.
Is your brain receiving from or sending to? There's no receiver or transmitter.
That's a
unless
question.
It's just all internal.
Say again.
Which means it's all in your head. You're not receiving frequencies from somewhere else or sending them to somewhere else. That's, first of all, that would be really bad science if somebody was trying to prove that. They would have to start with a conclusion. And I don't think it's even worth. It seems silly for me to even worry about trying to.
Right.
That's just me.
No, I
mean, it sounds fascinating, but I don't really care enough to.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's less about the source of the what's being received, and more about, like, is it possible to change that dial in the brain and in the body to. Well, because if you think about electricity and you have resistance, you have something that's corroded. Well, then the electricity is not going to be flowing as well through that thing. And to me, it's like the same in the body. If you have inflammation, that's the same.
I see where you're going now. If that's where you're going,
they're kind of connected. That's the same as resistance. So if you have a lot of inflammation in the body, then your body's not going to be operating as well. Same thing with being hydrated, because water is a conductor of electricity. And so if your brain doesn't have enough water, then it's not conducting electricity as fast as it could be. So that means that you're not as sharp as you are when you're hydrated, if you're dehydrated. So when there's less resistance in the body operates better, which includes the capacity to think and to transmit thought, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
So where am I going with this?
It sounds like you're trying to prove ESP or something like that, or
no,
no, like read someone's thoughts.
Not necessarily, but that's an interesting thing that you bring up, because the better the body works, the more you could like talking to God is something that I think about when I think of this. When people say they have a relationship with God or they're talking to God, I want to know, like, well, what is that like for you specifically? Mm-hmm. How are you receiving God's communication to you? Is it in your physical body? Is it in your heart? Is it emotional? Is it in a thought? So, I mean, what is that like for you?
It's all of the above.
So it can be a range of things.
Yeah.
Or a combination.
Primarily it's through Scripture.
Okay.
God's spoken to us 100% completely and perfectly through Scripture.
So when you're reading Scripture and you're processing the words that are on the page, do you have like an emotional response that is a confirmation of like, oh, this is what God is saying to me?
Sometimes, yeah. Yeah, if I'm reading something that I can apply immediately to my whatever's going on in my life at that moment, sure.
Exactly, which is what makes it a living word, because it applies to that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So if your body functions better with less resistance, do you think that you have a higher ability to be able to receive what God is trying to say to you?
No. I think God's capable of telling you what he needs to tell you, so regardless of your physical.
I agree. God is capable of telling us what he needs to tell us, but how good are we at listening is kind of where I'm going with this. So can you hear or listen better if your body is in a better state? Like, do you think that factors in?
Not necessarily, because in fact there's examples in Scripture of that exact thing, where of the opposite of that, where you're fasting, you're depriving yourself. You experience God's presence a lot more vividly when you're fasting, especially long-term fasting. So I think the opposite of what you're saying is, unless it's just the fact that impurities are gone because you've been fasting. I don't know. That's possible.
That's what I was going to give a counter to that, because
that's an interesting way of looking at it, but I don't. Again, I don't know if it's
worth
giving a lot of time to.
Right. But well, we'll conclude with that. My counter thought to that food fasting thing is that if you don't have any food in your system, there's just less resistance. There's less mass inside your physical body. So as you're empty but hydrated, then you can function real well. Maybe you can't lift something as heavy or whatever, but that's kind of.
But you are more open to the spiritual
yes
aspect of things.
Exactly.
Good and bad.
Yeah.
Because Jesus experienced Satan and the Holy Spirit while he was in that 40-day fast in the desert.
Yeah, 40-day fast, man. That is bold. Cool. Well, I think that kind of finalizes my questions on radio and frequency and resistance and stuff like that. But I can move into some other stuff now. Oh, well, this connects well. Music.
Frequencies.
Yeah. You're a musician.
I am.
What inspired you? What was the first thing that catalyzed you to pick up an instrument or to play an instrument or to sing or whatever it is you did first?
My mom. When I was little. I mean, I can't even remember how. I can't remember a time when she wasn't singing and playing all the time. Ever since I was tiny, she was always either listening or playing, practicing for gigs, or because she played events and bars and like fairs and stuff like that. She would be on stage doing stuff and recording. She recorded a couple of albums over the years. And then when I moved away from her to Michigan to live with Dad, I had a really good friend of mine that was into rock, like 80s rock and roll, and that was a lot of influence also on me.
How old were you?
When I moved to Michigan, I was 10, and then I lived there till I was 16 and moved back to Oregon.
When did you pick up an instrument first?
When I actually started playing an instrument was probably when I moved back to Oregon, 16.
Okay. And what was it? An acoustic
guitar? Yeah, acoustic guitar.
Right on.
Yeah.
And what were your major musical inspirers at that point as far as bands?
Well, I couldn't really play any of them, but I loved Aerosmith and Motley Crue, Kiss, Styx, Journey, Rush, Pink Floyd. Those were the main ones.
Cool. Those are good ones.
Rat, Poison.
Haven't heard of them.
Cinderella. Never heard of Rat or Poison?
Oh, I've heard of Poison. I thought it was one. I thought you were saying Rat Poison.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, I definitely have heard of hilarious. Poison. So what, do you have a favorite instrument?
To play?
Yeah.
No, not really.
Right on.
I played the acoustic and the bass almost exclusively. Those are my two main. I think I love them both for different reasons, and I'm really loving the bass more and more lately, though. Just playing on stage at church and stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's great to play behind a band leader, worship leader that really knows what he's doing. He's a professional, so
that's awesome.
It's really good.
You I heard you for the first time a few months ago singing, like really actually singing. And this is the first time in my life.
The first time?
The first time in my life I've ever heard you actually really sing.
Shame on me.
And put your heart in it. And wow, you are a good singer. And it was really inspiring. So thanks for that. And don't stop singing. It was really moving for me to hear.
Well, I've been leading worship at a small group every week for a few months now, so I'll be singing a lot more.
Good.
Yeah. And in fact, our worship leader at church asked me if I wanted to lead a weekend in December or January, so I'll be doing that.
Awesome. Do you think that you can sing better if your body has less resistance in it?
If I have less resistance around the waist, yeah, for sure. And if I'm standing up.
Yeah. Posture is huge with that because it's these body cavities that are pumping air.
Mm-hmm.
So you basically have like a balloon. So like a balloon, and the way that your muscles squeeze the air out of that balloon gives the shape and flavor and tone to what you're singing.
Right.
Combined with the
and the volume too.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I love it. So body cavities have musculature. The relationship between the muscles and the cavities of the body have a lot to do with how the sound sounds.
Yep.
I love all that stuff.
For sure.
You ever meet any famous musicians?
I met Leo Kottke by accident once in a music store. There's a Guitar Center in Phoenix.
And who's that?
He's a guitar player. He's a folk guitarist.
Okay.
Really, really talented.
Cool.
A lot of slide guitar and
right on
stuff like that. Who else? There have been others. None really stand out.
Yeah. That's okay.
Yeah.
You care to share a little bit about your military service?
Yeah, there's not a lot to share.
We'll see.
Okay.
What brought you to be serving in the military?
Oh,
what was
man, you know this story.
What was the driving force in why you went into the military?
Oh, that's a good one. Nice. Let's see how you did that. Yeah, I was living with my mom and stepdad in Oregon when I was 16. And they went out of town for a few days. And they just bought a new pickup truck, a new Ford Ranger, and I was anxious to get my license, but I couldn't wait. And so I took the Ranger out for how do you kids say?
A joyride.
A joyride. That's it.
How do you kids say? Yeah. So
yeah, I drove it to school a couple of days, and then I did some fishtailing on a dirt road and went sideways into a barbed wire fence and put some scratches on it. And so I was scrambling to try and find the right color paint at a Ford dealership in town, and didn't have enough money to buy the touch-up paint, and they found out about it. And my stepdad was a drunk Marine, so he had zero tolerance for any kind of misbehaving. So he told me my options were to join the military or to join the Job Corps.
What is the Job Corps?
It's like a rehab thing for teenagers.
Okay.
They're usually assigned the Job Corps by court order.
Oh, got
it. It's like a work camp kind of thing. But they go out in the forest and they do. In Oregon, they do forest work and they do, pick up trash on the road and build things.
So it's community service, essentially.
It's community service, yeah. And it would have been some maybe good skill building, but I would have been around some really rough people.
Miscreants.
So I decided to join the Army National Guard instead, and I think my mom wasn't happy about it, but I don't think she had much of a say in it. She signed my papers when I was 17, and off I went.
And
they told me the Army told me that I was doing a great thing, and I was going to be a supply clerk. So that was fun.
So you didn't choose a job or try for any specific job at that time?
Nope, they had one job available, and my ASVAB scores were really high.
Mm-hmm.
I could have, if there were other jobs, and if I had a different recruiter for a different unit or something, I could have had probably a good job in computers or something.
What did you do as a supply clerk?
Well, one of my duties, which I'm really excited about, was I was the armorer. So I was in charge of opening and closing the armory where all the weapons were stored, and I issued and took in weapons. So
you would track the weapon, what type of weapon, what serial number it was, and what equipment it had attached to it.
Yep,
and those serial numbers as well.
Most of those weapons were assigned to individuals. So
you would keep track of that as well.
I would keep track of
who's assigned what.
It was a rack of 60 weapons, and Captain this got number 7, and cool. Sergeant this got number 15 or whatever.
Okay.
And that was the easiest way to keep track of them.
What else did you do as a supply clerk?
Paperwork, inventory.
Yeah, okay. So admin, kind of boring stuff.
Yeah, it wasn't exciting. Driving, when we had our two-week deployments, we would drive far sometimes. We went from Oregon to Southern California one year for 2 weeks. That was my first exposure to actual desert.
Oh, okay.
With hot wind, and I had never experienced that before.
Oh.
And coming from the Pacific Northwest, that was kind of a shocker. So we went to Fort Hunter Liggett in Southern California, which is near Camp Roberts, which is near Death Valley, I think.
Okay. I haven't heard of either of those.
Yeah. One of them's a National Guard post, and one of them's an Army post. So
okay.
And they're not far from each other, if I remember right.
And how long did you serve?
From April of 87 to May of 93, so 6 years.
Oh, wow, okay. Oh, that's longer than I thought it was.
6 years active guard, and then I think it was 2 or 3 years in active guard after that, ready reserve kind of thing.
I was also under the impression that it was your dad that sent you in to the military.
Nope.
Wow, okay. Were you in contact with him at that time?
Not much. No, not much.
No,
that was another family dynamic that I'd rather not get into.
Okay.
Publicly.
Yeah. Well, if you care to share, I can cut this out and save it for the family history book.
Oh, I'll share it off mic.
Okay.
At some point.
Yeah.
I may have shared it with you before. I don't know.
So he was he aware that you went into the military at that time?
Yeah, I'm sure my mom probably cleared it with him, and yeah, I don't know if he was excited about it or not, but yeah, I'm pretty sure he knew about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe he didn't know about it, but it would surprise me if my mom would do that without
not telling him. Okay.
Because they were friendly with each other. I mean, they didn't communicate a lot, but They weren't. When it came to me, they communicated enough to, make decisions and stuff together.
Would you do that again as far as the military service?
I don't regret it.
Yeah.
I'm proud of the service. It was good for me. It was really good for me, and it did straighten me out to the point, sort of, mostly.
Yeah.
But
right on. Hot topic today is psychedelics, and I know that that's a kind of a touchy subject. But what is your understanding and history with psychedelics or being around that?
I don't. If I was around it as a kid, is that what you mean? When I was growing up or anything? I didn't know it if I was.
Mm-hmm.
I know my mom and stepdad did various kinds of uppers and downers and whatever they were called. I don't know that they did any psychedelics.
Okay.
But when I had moved back to Oregon when I was 16, there were cow pastures all over the place and psilocybin growing all over the place, but I never messed with any of that. I did try LSD once. Somebody gave me what are those things called? What's that called?
A tab?
No, it wasn't called that. At the time, it was
a paper. It's a paper though, right?
It's a little piece of paper with the stuff on it. But
I don't know what it was.
Someone on a bus gave it to me, and I tried it.
Some random person?
Some dude. Never seen him before. Never saw him again.
Whoa. So what was the setting you tried it in? Did you take it as soon as he gave it to you?
No, I took it later that day, I think.
Did you know what it was?
Yeah, I knew what it was.
You knew kind of.
I didn't know what to expect. Thinking back, I wish I'd only tried like half of it.
Yeah. What
pretty
happened?
Intense. Oh, there were metallic dragons, and there were dogs with red eyes.
So are these things that you're seeing, like, and it looks like this is an actual real thing in the same room as you, or is this something that you're imagining when you close your eyes?
The dragons I saw when I closed my eyes.
Okay.
When I was laying in the dark.
Uh-huh.
The dog was real.
It was an actual dog.
I actually went out walking to the store to get, a Coke or something, and there was a dog in someone's yard, and it was black, and it had bright red eyes, and it was snarling at me, and I just kept on walking. I don't remember much of it, but...
Was it behind a fence?
I don't even remember. It didn't seem like it was, but it might have been.
So this whole experience, you were by yourself?
Yeah.
And what were your beliefs at that time?
I didn't really have much of a belief system at the time.
Were you being raised in Catholic church at that time?
No, at that time, no. I had just come back from boot camp.
Okay.
And I was just back from the military, from training.
How long did all that last?
Into the night. I don't remember, 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours.
Yeah.
I fell asleep and I was fine the next day, so I don't remember. Yeah. I don't know how long, but...
What did you think of that whole experience the next day?
I wasn't proud of it. I wasn't happy about it.
Yeah.
It was an experience I wasn't, I'm glad I got it out of the way, I guess.
But it wasn't over.
I wouldn't recommend it. That's for dang sure. I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah. So it wasn't a good experience.
In general, no, it wasn't.
No.
It was real. It was like a vivid,
intense.
Yeah. So that's enough about that.
Yeah. Well, my last question about that is, did you listen to any music?
Yeah.
What did you listen to?
I was listening to Metallica.
Oh.
That's when I saw the Metallic Dragons.
Very good. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
it was cool at the time.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Right on. I've noticed that those types of things, those psychedelic things, make a person much more sensitive to sound and to music, especially. It's can be very, very impactful. So if you do that and don't listen to good music, or you listen to dark music, it can be very, very bad, very dark.
Interesting.
Yeah. Let's see. We'll taper off that subject, but just a couple other things about that. Are you aware of the research that's being done with psilocybin and MDMA in particular?
Mm-hmm.
You are?
I'm a little bit aware of it. I don't know much about it.
There's
To me, it's an excuse to take drugs. It's just a kind of a...
regardless of the outcome of what's happening?
I just think it's an excuse to use drugs.
Even if people are being healed from opiate addiction?
I didn't know that's what it was for, opiate addiction. I thought it was for PTSD or something like that.
Well, MDMA is actually having an 84% cure rate for treatment-resistant PTSD in war veterans that have PTSD.
It sounds like you rehearsed that line.
I have looked into this. I've listened to a lot of information about it. But yeah, it's fascinating because these guys that go in for that have major PTSD, that have tried all different kinds of medications, and their treatments, the PTSD is resistant to the treatments that are being done for them. They're going into this study with MAPS, which is called Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies. They're doing research with these veterans and MDMA with a guided male and female therapist who are trained in a particular setting, and they're having 84% effective cure rate without return, without people coming back and saying, oh, my PTSD came back. So that's just massive in that world.
Okay, in that world.
Yeah.
What I see is that I think God can heal anything the mind does, and I think those kinds of things are counterfeits to what God can do for real for somebody.
So you don't think that God is giving us these tools to be
Absolutely
able to heal
not.
these things?
No, I don't.
Even the natural ones?
Natural ones can be counterfeited by the enemy too.
How? What do you mean?
Like marijuana started out as just simple hemp, and it's been hybridized and hybridized and hybridized and hybridized to the point where what?
Hemp is a totally different plant from cannabis. They're different plants.
Okay.
So marijuana doesn't come from hemp, and it never did.
That's an example. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not all sciencey about this stuff, but what I do know is that Satan counterfeits things that God creates for good. Satan counterfeits to make himself look better, to make himself more attractive. And that's just what I see. That's what I see with when people deny God or ignore God as a possibility of healing. That's all they have to turn to is what scientists say might work.
So what about studies that are proving that these things actually do work? Well, the other one that I looked at was that Johns Hopkins is studying the application of psychedelics to curing Alzheimer's.
I don't think all science is good. I think science can be detrimental. I think long term, I think these are real problems because they don't really address things that science can't address.
Like the spiritual.
Like spiritual.
You don't think that these things do that? Is what you're saying?
If they do, it's counterfeit. It's demonic.
Okay. Right. I understand. Okay. Cool. And final cap on that subject is that you think that you don't think that any of those things could be a gift from God to help with these ailments?
No.
Okay.
I don't.
Right on. Okay. Well, thank you for talking about that with me. I know that's not your favorite subject.
I'm getting a little perked up here.
By any means, but I would not be doing my due diligence if I didn't address these things that I have questions about.
I understand.
So going into spirituality and faith, how were you raised, because were you raised Catholic?
When I was with my mom before I moved to Michigan when I was 10, growing up with my mom, she was an atheist. She didn't want to talk about God. I asked her, do you believe in God? And she's like, no, I don't want to talk about that.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
So
So you didn't have any good guidance in any direction?
No,
at that age?
not at all.
Okay.
And then I moved, when I was 10 to Michigan to live with Dad and Mary, my stepmom. They were very strict Catholics.
So you went from one end of the spectrum to the other real quick.
Yep, pretty much. And I embraced it. I accepted it as, because it was structured and it was, disciplined, and there was no relationship with God there. So it was a form of counterfeit also, but
it was kind of void.
Yeah, it was rituals, and I've since learned that Jesus taught that God doesn't desire those kind of things. But I did get a basic foundation of who God is and who Jesus is and what his purpose for coming to earth was, to becoming a human.
Yeah, it taught you a little bit about the Bible in that?
A little bit.
How
they
long?
never encouraged people to study the scripture on their own. In
Really?
fact, it was discouraged.
Whoa, why? Because the priest is the interpreter of it?
Yep.
Because
Because the church, because the church is really the only entity that's capable or authorized of interpreting scripture, and so I just never really got into the Bible much because of that. So
the great spiritual leaders take it upon themselves to be the rulers of the spiritual texts.
Yeah.
It's kind of culty and
sort of bordering on that. Yep.
Yeah. When did that transition? When did you start to move away from Catholicism or learn more about Jesus rather than the structure of Catholicism?
It would have been after I came back from boot camp and got kind of established. I had a friend who had a single mom, and she offered me a place to stay, a room of my own, basically, that I could rent from her. And she said the only caveat is that I have to go to church with them. So I was like, okay. Thank God they weren't Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses or something like that, because I would have gone.
Could have changed your trajectory.
Very much.
Yeah.
So.
But they were Christians.
Yeah. Yep, Vineyard, in fact. So
okay. Very
my
cool.
first exposure to the Vineyard was a full band on stage playing songs that I could relate to, and everything came together. And so I got saved on January 28th, I think, 1988.
Wow.
1988, and Mom was with me. We weren't married yet.
You knew each other at that time.
Yeah, we were dating.
How long had you known each other? A couple years?
Since we met in the fall of '86, must have been when we started going, it might have been January, after fall break or after Christmas break of '87. So January '87.
And you two went to Vineyard together.
We went to the Vineyard together in '88. Is when the first time we went.
Very cool.
Because I was living at other places for that year.
Right on.
And '88 is when I moved in with them and went to church, and
that brought you to brought you to your faith.
Well, not immediately, but yeah, it started my walk. Yeah,
your relationship with Jesus.
Yeah, and so I lived with her, and she actually taught me quite a bit over the next several months, and I kept going to the Vineyard, and then we, Mom and I were going to get married, and our Vineyard pastor wouldn't marry us because we hadn't gone through pre-marriage counseling or anything like that, and we were just anxious to get married, and And then, let's see, it must have been February of 89, we found out she was pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
So that sealed the deal that he wasn't going to marry us.
Rude.
So, well, it's good reasons. Good reasons. It's just not the right foundation to start a marriage out on.
That's a good point.
You know. So we did beat the odds for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody gave us any hope.
Yeah.
So we were pregnant throughout 89, and your sister was born in September. We were married in June of that year, 89. So
A 3-month pregnancy, that's quick.
yeah, that's what it was.
Sorry.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't a shotgun marriage. It was a
Mom
shotgun
mentioned
wedding. It was, it was consensual from both sides, and happy to do so.
Awesome. And how long have you been married now? How many years is that? That's 80, 89, you said?
Yeah, 33
Yeah.
years this year.
Very good. What's been the high point of that span of time? Is there anything you can point at?
The last few years
Really?
have been my favorite of our marriage. Yeah.
That's awesome. And
Yeah, we've gotten to be best friends. More so now than ever. So
that's exciting.
It's good.
That's exciting. What's your time limit?
Oh, I don't know. What time is it?
It's 7:30.
7:30. We can go till 8.
Okay. Yeah,
That's
perfect.
okay. If you have more stuff.
Oh, I got all kinds of stuff. I feel like we could probably talk for several hours.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Question: how do you find stillness or peace in your day?
I turn things off. I turn screens off. I set my phone down. Walk to another room or outside. I really prefer to be outside for most things. So
Cool.
if I could have my office outside, that would be ideal.
Do you work with your window open or anything?
Most of the time when it's not too hot or too cold, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good. I like it. When you were, I don't know what age you were, but at one point, after I was born, I was a little kid, you left the church for a span of time.
Yep.
It was like 10, 15 years.
No, I don't think it was that long. It was 7 or 8.
No.
Yeah.
What drove you away from the church?
Just my own selfish desires. Sexual addiction. It was a big part of it. I felt shamed. I felt ashamed all the time, and I felt
like porn or hookers.
Porn. Yeah, I was never went outside my marriage.
Right on.
Yeah, porn. Well, I could consider that outside your marriage spiritually, but
yeah, not with an actual person.
Yeah, not with another person.
Okay. So you felt ashamed because of that, and then you decided that you didn't want to be at church because it made you feel shame?
Not because I felt ashamed of being at church, but because I felt like I was being fake all the time.
Yeah.
And I was tired of pretending that I was this perfect church person, and so.
So it didn't have anything to do with not believing?
No,
anymore?
Not really. No.
Okay. It was just kind of doing your own thing at that.
Yep.
For that span of time.
Just leave me. It was like the Godsmack song was in my head a lot at that time. Just leave me alone. You know that "Leave Me Alone" song?
I don't think I know it. If they played it on,
really?
I may. I just don't. I don't know. I'm not well versed in a lot of their stuff.
Well, it's probably good.
And what while you were away, like what did you do or explore? So it wasn't a disbelief in Christianity that brought you away. So you weren't exploring other belief systems during that time.
No, definitely not.
You were just not going. You were just
Right.
just kind of not a part of it.
Yep.
Okay. And what?
It was a desert experience. That's what I call it. And it was a kind of a self-imposed desert experience, and it started right around the time we bought our first house in Glendale, and it didn't have anything to do with that, but that's kind of the marker in time that I think of. Late 99.
And what drew you back in?
You?
How?
Not you specifically, but the thought of Mom and I went to a marriage. She talked me into going to a marriage conference in Las Vegas. We went to a marriage conference and heard some people talk. One of them talked about the Raising the Modern Day Knight book and fatherhood, and God just soaked me with grace, and I was crying and crying for a couple of days about how I've neglected being a good father and being an example of Jesus to you guys, especially you and Ben, and not protecting Katie the way I should have. And so there was that book, that Raising a Modern Day Knight book, and there was another one. The name escapes me now, but it was about a fatherhood, about being a leader of your family. Point Man, that's what it was called. I don't remember Point Man was the name of that book.
Cool title.
And it was kind of had a military undertone to it throughout it, but not like strict, but as a leader of your family.
Right on.
Mom read that book to me on the way home from Las Vegas, and I had trouble seeing the road. I was in tears the most of the time. It was pretty good.
Wow.
And that was July of 2007. And we started going back to church. I started going back to church then. And that was just a few months before. It was, 6 months, 8 months before Marty announced that he was going to be planting the Revealed Church. And so I got fully back involved in ministry and serving and helping and doing all that stuff. And so we planted the church in 2008 with Marty.
Yeah.
Real involved in that. That was really a really good experience.
Cool. Well, that's great. Yeah, that's kind of been a propelling force for me coming back to Christianity is what am I going to do with this boy? How am I going to raise him? What's the best way? What do I know? Because I know there's a lot I don't know, but
yeah.
So that
there's a lot more you could know if I had been more involved in those 7 or 8 years.
That's true, and at the same time, I was not receptive to much of anything at that time. So it's don't blame it all on yourself.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I remember one time you tried teaching me, like you were working on that silver Honda Civic hatchback, and you wanted to teach me something under the hood. And I didn't care at all because I had to play Halo, and that was way more important. So
funny.
So yeah, but now I know how an engine works, and thanks for
you know a lot more than I do now. That's for sure.
Thanks for trying to teach me. Yeah, I know a fair bit. Know enough to get myself in trouble. Yeah, right on. Well, let's see what else we got here.
That wasn't the end of my troubles, though. As you know, troubles started up again in like 2012.
And what were those troubles?
The drinking started. I went through those years of drinking and going to church.
How many years?
It was almost 4 years.
How much were you drinking?
A lot.
It's like Depends on the person. I mean, like,
Yeah, between a fifth and a 175 every day
wow.
to blacking out. Just blacked out every day for a couple of years.
And
It was, and I don't know why I mean, I remember starting out just thinking, hey, you know what? We missed our college years, so we're going to make up for it now and have some fun. And it seemed like the church that we went to in Surprise was kind of lax in that kind of stuff. And so it was easy to hang around people from church that drank a lot and get into that stuff. So we did. I did mostly.
mm-hmm.
And so that was a start of a spiral that was worse than my non-church days for sure.
Yeah.
Because in my non-church days, I wasn't drinking or anything. Wasn't anything like that.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, there were those few years where I couldn't wait to get off the stage and get home and start drinking. From, playing bass on the worship team, going straight home and drinking. And it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. What was your alcohol of choice during those days? Or did it change?
It was mostly vodka and Coke.
Huh. Yeah,
That was
Coca-Cola, not cocaine.
Coca-Cola. Yeah. There was no drugs involved. No.
Other than alcohol.
No. Caffeine on occasion.
Yeah. Yeah. So you wanted to kind of make up for the fun times of the college days that didn't really take place when a lot of people get some of that stuff out of their system.
Kind of. That was kind of the mindset.
That
was the excuse
to get into that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because we had kids so early and started our family really young.
You really did, which is for young people, that's got to be. I can't even imagine what that's like being, because I didn't have my son until I was 29. Yeah, 29. And even now, I feel like, I'm 100% not prepared for this. I don't know that anybody ever really will be.
Welcome to parenting, though.
Yeah,
for sure.
To have your kids at 19 and have 3 of them from ages like 19 to 23.
About that, yeah.
During that span, you got 3 kids and you're 23. Like, that must have been extremely difficult or very challenging. Like, what was the hardest part of that? Was it the relationship dynamic between you and mom, or was it like
it was keeping a vehicle running?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Every time we would try to get a second vehicle, they'd both break. Neither one of them would run.
I am experiencing that right now.
It's the weirdest thing.
That is. Huh.
Mom will say the same thing. If every time we tried to get a second vehicle, we'd end up with none. That worked.
Yeah, so 1 is 1 and 2 is none.
2, yeah, exactly. Didn't quite work out that way in that case, but
okay.
Yeah. But there's redemption to the drinking story.
Yeah,
it's
so
not the end of it.
So you were addicted to alcohol.
Oh yeah.
And for several years.
A few years, yeah, 3.5 years or so.
Yeah.
And I had ultimatums from a couple of people, and I tried going to a couple of AA meetings, and they were just dumb, and it was just like, these people are beneath me.
Yeah.
The groups, it was just a bunch of people complaining about their lives.
Oh.
It was just not.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've heard from some people that's like their ticket out.
It works for a lot of people. It really, really, really does.
I imagine for me, I'd be like,
for other people,
I'd probably feel the same way. This is dumb. I'm going to go do something else.
Oh man.
I'm going to go get a drink.
And then, yeah.
Yeah.
And then God just said, I'm taking this from you. And that was it. He just delivered me from the addiction.
How? Wait, like, you had ultimatums from some people, family, friends?
mom and work.
Okay, and they said, "Hey, if you don't correct this, we're out of here." Or
No,
something.
they weren't. I don't think mom threatened to leave me. I don't remember. Maybe she did.
But either way, you had ultimatums, and you attempted to resolve this by going to AA. Were there any other ways that you attempted to stop drinking?
No.
So then one day
I just decided that's it. I'm not doing this anymore.
you decided it.
I decided it, but I know God took it from me. I mean, there's no way. I just did it on my own. No way.
Because you no longer felt the hunger for that thing?
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
Wow. And were you in prayer about that? Did you pray during those times that you were drinking?
I don't even remember. I probably did. I remember waking up every single day saying, God, take this from me. This is out of control. And
you knew it was beyond you at that point.
Yeah.
It had spiraled too far.
Yep.
Wow. So one day it's just, you don't want it anymore.
Yep. It was just like that.
Wow.
I don't know what the date was. I didn't pay attention to that or anything, but
yeah. How did your life start to change after that day?
Well, I got healthier. I could see clearly, literally and figuratively. In the mornings, I'd wake up and I wouldn't be in a literal fog.
Yeah.
I could wake up and have coffee and think about my plans for the day and not worry about, do I have to go to the store? Relationship with mom changed 180 degrees.
Wow.
It was really great. I was able to focus on work again. I don't know about you guys or how anything changed with you guys, because you were at that time, let's see, that would have been November of 2015. November 2015 is when that happened. And I was still in Michigan at the time. I was working on that Plex implementation. It was like a 6-month project where I was there for 3 or 4 weeks at a time.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
I don't remember where were you at that time? Were you back home already?
Yeah. I was back home. I think I just started working for the diesel place.
Okay.
Because I went to motorcycle mechanic school right out of there, got a job, didn't like it, got another offer to work at a diesel place, and end of 2014 is when I started with the diesel place. So,
okay.
So yeah, that's what I was doing, and
so I don't know how much it was impacting you guys, if you were angry or fearful or whatever toward me. I don't know. I was pretty much in my own world.
I think for me it was kind of a redo of the previous phase of you like not being in church. It just felt like you were just far away.
Yeah.
Just felt distance and didn't
sure.
didn't really pursue it much. I talked to you on the phone here and there, and had decent conversations and stuff, but it wasn't really like we're bonding. That wasn't really there. But I've seen in you visually and emotionally, psychologically over the past few years a massive change. I feel like you've grown into your age, and you not only have wisdom, but when you've matured so much over the last few years. It's really awesome to see. So I'm really grateful for that. And
cool. Well, good. And our relationship, I think, has really grown a lot too.
Way better. Yeah.
So
better, not bitter. So what's your relationship like right now with alcohol?
It's pretty rare. I mean, I don't hardly ever drink anymore at all. Maybe once or twice a year I'll have something, but
when you do, is it just manageable and it's not?
Oh yeah, it's not something I look forward to.
It's not
something I regret afterwards or anything like that.
And no blackouts.
No.
Right on.
Heck no.
Right on. So it sounds like you have a decent, healthy relationship.
Oh yeah. I don't I'd like to think I don't have a relationship with it.
Well,
with alcohol.
I guess we define that differently then.
Yeah.
Relating to it. And so, because
But-
some people don't drink alcohol at all, and
Yeah.
that's their relationship to it, so that they don't drink it.
And the AA types will be like, they'll be sober for life, and they'll
Yeah.
know they'll know the date, and they'll have their coins,
Yep.
and they'll all that stuff, and that's great for them. And but I feel like God has freed me to enjoy it once in a while, and it's on rare occasions. But-
Yeah, depends on the person.
So,
and
yeah.
there's a balance to it all. Really. Have you been attached to, or have you identified with, the success or failure of your kids? Has the success or failure of your kids defined you in some way or another to yourself?
Ooh, to some point. Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm super proud of all of you guys for different things and different reasons, and none of you have really ever brought me any kind of shame. There are times when I've felt like I've failed as a father.
You have an example?
No.
Based on
none recently though. I mean, it was
based on the actions of one of your children, you felt like you had failed
yeah,
in some capacity?
or all of them at different times for little things that, Katie's been a perfect angel her whole life, so I can't really think of anything for her. But
Except the sunflower seeds, apparently.
that didn't bother me. That was Mom's problem. That bothered her way more than it bothered me.
Right on.
The one time I remember Katie doing something, I found her car at some boy's house that she wasn't supposed to be at. And she got in trouble for that.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, she was a pretty good kid.
Right on.
I've always been proud of her. And now she's making her own way and doing her own thing, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, big change.
Ben, there's been a lot of years that we've kind of been, I wouldn't say estranged, because we still, communicate on occasion, but just kind of a little distant. And a lot of that was his addiction. A lot of it was my addiction.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like a failure in that part. But when I think about the man that he is, I'm pretty proud of him. And then you?
Yeah, tell me about me. What
Man, it's
what
been
did I
a
mess
roller coaster of
crap.
of pride and disappointment. And
Yeah, I bet. I did not give you an easy time in my teenage years.
the Lisa days were probably the worst.
That's the most frustrating for me. I felt so compelled. I felt I had such a purpose to be of service to this girl.
Yeah.
And
You were trying to fix her, or?
Not trying to fix her, trying to offer compassionate support in a time where she didn't have a good support
Mhm.
system. And I don't know that really has changed much in my way of relationships, but
Yeah.
at the time it
I
was
know.
like I had this massive drive to help this person and to be there for this person.
Mhm.
And everything outside of that situation was telling me, no, stop doing this. You're not supposed to be doing this. You're not allowed to date, like all this stuff. So it was just this massive butting heads of like
Mhm.
what I felt I should be doing, which was ultimately compassion driven.
Yeah.
And
Compassion is a powerful emotion, and it can be
detrimental.
used for very good things, and it can be really detrimental. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a really difficult thing for me to learn about in relationships. It's about how much compassion do you allow yourself to actually give out to these things, and
Mhm.
where's the boundary of that? Because if you don't have a boundary on that, you're going to get taken for all you're worth and
All
more.
the time. Yep.
Yeah.
People see that, they'll jump right on it.
Yeah, exactly. High value target for certain types of people.
Yep, exactly.
But yeah, those were interesting interesting days. I was consistently weaving stories of this is what I'm doing when I was actually doing other things. And
most of my frustrations with you have involved your relationships with other people.
Yeah.
Specifically that one and the latest one.
Yeah, because both of those are not just affecting me, they're affecting the rest of my family.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
big time.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and then there were a couple in between there that we were really excited about.
Yeah.
For a while. And
well,
I don't know what happened there, but maybe I don't want to know.
No, I don't. No, one of them I don't think you want to know, but the other one was just that we were going different directions, and it was just, both of them were just going different directions.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one was extremely sad for me. It was very, very difficult for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one was easier, but still like, oh, what have I done?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, but the points of pride far outweigh any disappointments I've had with you, son, and it's the military service and the getting through motorcycle school and the working for an amazing company that's really seems to take good care of you.
Yeah.
And just sticking with it. And I remember a time when you didn't want this to be your career, but I mean, it seems to be working out for you pretty well. And
yeah, it does. I've embraced it since then, and it's really great to have that skill, because I think I've gotten over the hump of the learning curve. Now I'm capable enough to where I have confidence when I'm going to attack a job.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's something that I don't know, then I know that I can find out the answer.
Yeah,
I can figure it out or whatever. So I'm over the hump of the lack of confidence in my ability.
Cool. That's good. Yeah, I can see that.
As far as your parents and their inevitable death, where do you stand with that, and how do you prepare mentally or emotionally for that, or do you even think about it?
I think a little bit about it. I'm not anticipating it, or I'm not.
You don't dwell on it?
No, not really.
Yeah.
I pray for them, and I hope they answer God's call on their life to follow Him, and I wish I had more hope that would happen, but I don't know, especially my mom.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of more extreme people coming to Christ.
Yeah.
Nothing is beyond God's ability to reconcile people with Him.
Yeah.
No matter who they are or what they've done or how long they've rejected Him.
Yeah.
And my dad is impossible to talk to about the faith.
Why so?
He's very stern in what he believes, and
yeah,
he gets worked up real easy.
Yeah.
So
that's where you get it from.
I'd like to think I've grown past that.
You have quite
every once in a while it wells up.
It's rare. It's much rarer these days, which is really nice for all of us.
I know.
The rest of the family. It's very, very.
It used to be. I know. I used to be
unapproachable.
Tyrant. Yeah. And I'm sorry for that.
No, thanks. I appreciate that. It's part of my growth process as well. So maybe that's what contributed to me being diplomatic or something, learning how to.
That's the middle child.
Oh, is that it?
Middle child is always the mediator.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Not always. That's a general rule.
Yeah. Right on. What's a project that you're doing right now that you're super excited about?
Well, the Rangers. I'm working on getting to the full Ranger status. So I have just a few more duty hours to do, and I think December 13th, I'm getting sworn in.
Oh, okay. I
Be a
thought
full
you.
ranger.
I thought you were. Okay, so you're in training still, basically.
I'm in
or
probation
period.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. That's very exciting.
Super exciting.
Yeah, good. Doing a service and a duty to your community.
Yep.
And networking and
yeah, it is.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
it's good. It hits a couple of
I've
those.
met a couple of lawyers
Oh,
in the Rangers.
let me get their contact info. I got so many questions for them.
Yeah, I know.
Oh man,
They're fun to talk to.
cool.
Without having to talk to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I also got a tabletop I need to get done in the next week or two.
Yeah, you're a carpenter too. We didn't talk about that at all.
Woodworking.
Yeah, woodworking's great. Well, we got a couple questions and we can close this out.
All right.
So what's a way that you see God working in your life right now?
Right now, he's providing for now and for the near future when I think things are going to just get bad for the next couple of years. So we're really working on being good stewards of his provision, of what he's giving and given us, growing our marriage. As long as we're keeping him at the center of our marriage, and we're staying close to him, the closer to him we are, the closer to each other we are.
Yeah.
Even if you just look at it on a, physical, if he's at the center and I'm here and she's here, we're close together.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
It does. It does. Have you seen a miracle happen in your lifetime?
Well, lots. My deliverance from alcohol is one of the big ones for sure. You coming back to Jesus is a big one. That's an answer to many years of prayer. The house we're in, the property we have, was a whole series of miracles.
Yeah.
That all worked together like a well-tuned machine. It was just incredible.
The way it all happened.
Yeah.
Very good. What's something that you're hopeful for?
Just more from God, more provision, more of him speaking to us and through us for each other, just for our community. I do have we're organizing the Serve Day in March for People's Valley that gets a bunch of volunteers together, and we're going to be cleaning up people's yards who want their yards cleaned up and stuff. So we just got Waste Management to donate 3 dumpsters and $1,500 in cash for the day, for the event.
Wow.
So
that's really
I
exciting.
filled out an application and they accepted it, and they threw in the $1,500 on top of the dumpsters I didn't even ask for.
Wow.
They said, "Hey, yeah, we're so excited about this. We're going to give you cash." So
that's cool.
It goes to there's a
Reward.
nonprofit that we use to sign up to get the donation of the dumpsters. Is the fire department auxiliary that basically helped us to do that, because they have to go through a nonprofit in order to do the donation. But that was pretty cool. So I'm hopeful that that's going to be a huge success. It'll help people that can't help themselves, disabled and elderly people that can't clean up their yards and stuff. So get a bunch of volunteers to help with that.
Yeah. What's a word of encouragement you have for people in these strange times?
Stick together. Keep like-minded people around you to help you with physical needs and service needs and just things like that.
Right on.
Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for asking me.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Hopefully we can do it again sometime and get deeper into some other subjects.
Yeah. We'll do a part 2.
Right on.
Stick together. Don't be afraid to ask for help.